The shadows lengthened across the sidewalk as Marcus hurried home, his mind still occupied with work when he collided with her, sending papers flying in all directions through the autumn air. "I'm so sorry," he stammered, dropping to his knees to gather the scattered documents, but when he looked up, the words died in his throat. She stood like an apparition in the fading light, her alabaster skin seeming to glow with an inner luminescence, her eyes pools of unfathomable depth that shifted between emerald and azure depending on how the light caught them. "No harm done," she replied, her voice carrying a melodic quality unlike any accent Marcus had ever encountered, each syllable precisely articulated as though English were an instrument she had mastered rather than inherited. They introduced themselves. He was Marcus, she was Lyra, and something inexplicable passed between them in that moment, a connection that defied the randomness of their meeting and hinted at cosmic orchestration. He invited her for coffee, surprised by his own boldness, and even more surprised when she accepted with a curious tilt of her head, as though examining a specimen of particular interest. The cafe buzzed with evening patrons, but Marcus felt enveloped in a pocket of stillness with Lyra, who asked incisive questions about human relationships, cultural rituals, and emotional attachments with an anthropologist's curiosity. "You speak as if you're studying us," Marcus joked, but Lyra merely smiled enigmatically, her fingers tracing patterns on the tabletop that seemed to follow some mathematical sequence he couldn't quite identify. When he asked about her background, Lyra provided answers that were simultaneously detailed and vague. She came from far away, had traveled extensively, was currently observing local customs, all delivered with an earnestness that discouraged further inquiry. Their meetings became frequent over the following weeks, each one deepening Marcus's fascination with this woman who possessed encyclopedic knowledge yet expressed childlike wonder at commonplace occurrences like raindrops on windows or synchronous fireflies. His friends grew curious about the mysterious woman who had captivated Marcus so completely, yet nobody seemed able to place her. "Where exactly does she work again?" asked Paul, his closest friend, after meeting Lyra at a dinner party where she had enchanted the room with obscure astronomical facts before abruptly excusing herself when the conversation turned to childhood memories. "She's in research," Marcus replied vaguely, realizing with discomfort that after weeks of intense connection, he knew surprisingly little about Lyra's daily life. Marcus began noticing peculiarities. Lyra's confusion at idioms, her habit of staring unblinkingly at people for uncomfortable lengths of time, her apparent immunity to temperature changes that left others shivering or sweating. When caught in a sudden thunderstorm, Marcus had been soaked and chilled while Lyra remained perfectly dry beneath rain that seemed to deviate around her form. She could recite obscure mathematical theorems yet struggled with simple cultural references, and sometimes forgot to eat or drink for entire evenings, as though sustenance were an afterthought. At night, Lyra would gaze at the stars with such longing that Marcus once jokingly asked if she missed her home among them, never expecting the flinch of recognition that flashed across her otherwise composed features. Despite these eccentricities, Marcus found himself falling irrevocably in love with Lyra's brilliant mind, her compassionate observations about humanity, and the gentle way she touched his face when they kissed, as though mapping every contour of his being. 3 months into their relationship, during a weekend getaway to a remote cabin, the peculiarities crystallized into undeniable strangeness. Marcus awoke at 3 a.m. to find Lyra standing naked by the window, her skin emitting a faint phosphorescent glow as she manipulated what appeared to be a translucent cube covered in symbols, which vanished the moment she sensed his consciousness. Later that morning, while hiking through dense forest, they became lost for hours despite Lyra's insistence that she knew precisely where they were, only to emerge exactly at their starting point as though the woods had rearranged themselves according to some pattern only she could perceive. That evening, as they sat before a crackling fire, Marcus could no longer contain his questions. "Who are you, really?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as though afraid the universe itself might overhear. "Where do you come from? Why do I sometimes feel you're studying me, studying all of us?" Lyra's ethereal beauty seemed to intensify as she regarded him with eyes suddenly ancient and weary. "Would you believe me if I told you the truth? Would you still look at me as you do now?" she asked, her fingers tracing those strange patterns again, this time on his palm. I don't know, Marcus admitted, feeling something fundamental shifting between them. But I need to know who I'm in love with. For several heartbeats, Lyra remained motionless, then with a resigned sigh that seemed to carry the weight of vast distances, she spoke words that shattered Marcus's reality. I am not from Earth, she said simply, her voice stripped of its usual musical quality. I come from a world orbiting a star you call HD 5980, in what your astronomers have named the Small Magellanic Cloud, approximately 200,000 light-years from this solar system. My species appears humanoid but differs in fundamental biological and cognitive structures. While I appear to be what you would classify as a young adult female, I have existed for over 300 of your Earth years, as my species typically lives 15 centuries before transitioning to another state of being. Marcus stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the explanation that would restore rationality to his world, but Lyra continued with methodical precision, describing interstellar propulsion systems, quantum entanglement communication devices, and the anthropological mission that had brought her to Earth to study human emotional bonding patterns. You're telling me you're an alien, Marcus finally said, his voice flat with disbelief even as his mind catalogued every inexplicable moment of their relationship. That's insane, Lyra. People will think you're completely delusional. Lyra nodded, accepting his skepticism with the same serene detachment she applied to all human reactions. I understand your cognitive framework makes this difficult to process. I should not have allowed personal attachment to interfere with my observational protocols, but I find myself experiencing emotions my species believed we had evolved beyond. In simple terms, Marcus, I love you, which complicates everything. In the days that followed, Marcus oscillated between rational explanations for Lyra's claims, mental illness, elaborate performance art, some bizarre test of his commitment, and the disturbing possibility that she might be telling the truth. He confided in Paul, who listened with growing alarm. Look, man, I don't know what's going on with Lyra, but this sounds dangerously delusional. Either she needs serious psychiatric help, or she's manipulating you for reasons I can't begin to guess, Paul cautioned, his concern evident. Promise me you'll be careful. People who construct these kinds of fantasies can be unpredictable. But even as doubt gnawed at him, Marcus couldn't deny the profound connection he felt with Lyra, alien or not. When she told him her research mission was concluding and offered him an impossible choice, to join her when her transport vessel arrived in 3 days' time, Marcus found himself considering it despite every rational objection. If you truly wish to understand who and what I am, come to Blackwood Clearing at midnight on the equinox, Lyra told him, her eyes reflecting starlight with unnatural brilliance. If you choose to stay, I will accept your decision without interference. If you choose to come with me, you must understand you can never return to Earth. Torn between love and logic, Marcus made a compromise. He would go to the clearing, but not alone. Despite Lyra's instructions to come unaccompanied, he convinced a reluctant Paul to hide nearby, armed with both a camera and a healthy dose of skepticism. If nothing happens, I'll seek help, Marcus promised. If something does, well, you'll be the only witness to the most important discovery in human history. The night arrived shrouded in mist, the clearing a perfect circle of silver-blue grass under the full moon's glow. Paul concealed himself among ancient oaks at the perimeter while Marcus stood center, his heart thundering against his ribs as midnight approached. At precisely 12, the air began to vibrate with subsonic frequencies that rattled teeth and bone, the mist swirling into geometric patterns too perfect to be natural. Paul's strangled gasp was barely audible over the building resonance as space itself seemed to fold inward, revealing a vessel that defied architectural logic, angles that shifted when directly observed, surfaces that reflected nothing yet revealed depths beyond comprehension, all encompassed in a structure the size of a small office building that somehow suggested vastly greater interior dimensions. A seamless aperture appeared, and Lyra emerged, radiant in her true form, still humanoid but now unmistakably alien, her movements fluid with an evolutionary grace that Earth's gravity could not constrain. You came, she said, her actual voice bypassing Marcus's ears to resonate directly within his mind. But you are not alone. Paul stumbled from his hiding place, camera forgotten as he gaped at the impossible sight before them. Holy! It's all true, he whispered, his face ashen in the otherworldly light emanating from the vessel. Marcus, it's actually true. Lyra approached with ethereal grace, extending her hand to Marcus. I have revealed myself at great personal risk. The choice remains yours, but it must be made now. The temporal window for departure is brief. Marcus looked from the extraordinary being before him to his friend's stunned face, the enormity of the decision overwhelming him. My lifespan, he managed to say, grasping at practical concerns to anchor himself. Even if I go with you, I'll age and die while you're still young. Lyra's smile held ancient wisdom. Your physical structure can be quantum reassembled to match our longevity parameters. The process is instantaneous and painless, realigning your cellular degradation patterns to extend your existence 50-fold. You would experience millennia alongside me, if that is your desire. Paul found his voice at last. Marcus, this is beyond anything we could have imagined. If you go, you'll be the first human to leave the solar system, to see another world. But you'll never come back. Your family, your friends, everyone you've ever known, will continue their brief lives without me, Marcus finished quietly. Or I can continue mine without ever knowing what lies beyond our tiny corner of existence. The decision crystallized with surprising clarity. Marcus embraced his friend fiercely. Tell them I found happiness, he whispered. Tell them I'm exploring the stars. With those words, he turned and took Lyra's outstretched hand, following her into the vessel that would become his home through the vastness of interstellar space. Inside, environments shifted and reconfigured according to principles that defied terrestrial physics, yet somehow felt intuitively navigable to Marcus's human perceptions. Lyra's influence, he realized, as she guided him to a chamber where swirling energy patterns surrounded him momentarily before dissipating, leaving him feeling fundamentally unchanged yet sensing new potentials within his transformed biology. The journey passed in what seemed mere days, though Lyra explained they had traversed distances that light itself would require millennia to cross. They emerged into orbit around a world of breathtaking beauty, a planet where twin moons cast ever-changing patterns of light across landscapes of impossible grandeur, where geometric structures of crystalline material harmonized with organic growth in city gardens spread across continents with mathematical precision. Lyra's people welcomed the human with curiosity rather than fear, their civilization having evolved beyond territorial aggression or xenophobic impulse. Marcus discovered a society where art and science had merged into a unified field of creative exploration, where individuality was celebrated within a telepathic collective consciousness that respected privacy while fostering unprecedented collaboration. Seasons passed, then years, as Marcus adapted to his new existence, learning the language of thought forms and energetic expression that made verbal communication seem primitive by comparison. He and Lyra established a dwelling on a coastal cliff overlooking violet waters, where flying creatures traced mathematical sequences through skies tinged with the emerald light of their sun. One evening, as they sat watching twin moons rise over the horizon, Lyra directed Marcus's attention upward to where the spiral arms of the Milky Way stretched across the alien sky. There, she said, indicating an unremarkable point of light amid billions. Your birth system, practically in our neighborhood by cosmic standards, yet impossibly distant by the measurements of your former species. Marcus contemplated the immensity of his journey, the friends and family who had surely long since accepted his disappearance, perhaps even mourned his presumed death. For a moment, nostalgia washed over him, memories of Earth's unique beauty, its chaotic vitality, the particular quality of sunlight through oak leaves on summer afternoons. But as Lyra's consciousness gently brushed against his, sharing wordless understanding and boundless love, Marcus knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right choice, trading one home among the stars for another, and gaining centuries of wonder that no human before him had ever experienced. Under the galactic spiral that held his past within its luminous arms, Marcus embraced his extraordinary future, grateful beyond measure for the collision of worlds that had brought him across 200,000 light-years to where he truly belonged.